urban plan for equitability. We'll be discussing making planning instruments work in India cities. I'll take a couple of minutes to just set a context for the discussion, followed by Vidya will be moderating the session. India's cities are at a critical juncture where, with the rapid urbanization and the scale and pace of urbanization of our cities, there's massive investments that are going into different sectors like metros, planning, housing, service delivery. While a lot of our cities still continue to struggle across what we call as a 4E challenge, which is economy, equity, engagement, and employment, where economically Indian cities are yet to explore their full economic potential. For example, globally a 1% rise in urbanization typically boosts around 4% per capita GDP, but in the case of India it's only 1.7. There's a stark difference. There's a lot of potential to be unlocked. Similarly, equity as well, the rate at which we are tackling urban poverty is quite slow, and especially in comparison to the rural areas. With respect to engagement as well, our governance systems, they remain disengaged and disconnected. There are also very few platforms for actually the citizens to engage and participate. Environment, with climate risks, increasing water stress, air pollution, and heat stress in cities, it's worsening the quality of life in general. This disconnect in the 4Es is very evident, and the 4E challenge is also ultimately manifesting in the way we live, also impacting our everyday lives. From your core service delivery to the long commute hours, it's just indicating a stark decline in quality of life in Indian cities. While there are a lot of systemic failures, one of the crucial element is the current planning system in itself, and the approach it takes, where it applies a one-size-fits-all approach to sort of tackle all the cities, despite their differentiated densities, population densities, market values, and general context itself. So I think what we're trying to sort of address or speak about is the planning systems which are applying the same DCR templates and same regulatory logics for all of these. And there's also a lot of evidence which shows that master planning or planning in India has been very slow and uneven. There is research that says that 50% of the statutory towns lack a master plan, and almost 40% of the capital cities currently do not have an active master plan. It also translates to the development control regulations, because ideally master plans and DCRs work together. It sort of, I think, highlights the issue of why states are more focused on they currently have a statewide or uniform DCR which applies across cities. Again, despite the different context, population, and densities. So what this means is, for a state like Maharashtra, the DCR that is applied for a Pimpri Chinchwad or a Solapur, which has very different populations and the scale of development, is the regulations are applied in a similar way. There are also a few city-specific DCRs, but again, they're very outdated. Only I think 5 of 3 million plus cities have revised their DCRs in the past 7 years, which also reflects differently on, they essentially do not reflect on the land values or the market demand or even the mobility systems in these cities. Now, what the result of this unpredictable or inadequate regulations is also that there is sprawl where we need density. There is actually exclusion where, in the high value course, and there is congestion where the capacity is low. Overall, the planning systems are not really addressing the 4Es, that is economy, environment, equity, and engagement. But today, I think we have a lot of opportunities. We stand at an inflection point where the opportunities are very clear and strong. If we focus on large cities where they are regulated with clarity, flexibility, and context-specific approach, we can immediately unlock high economic productivity. We can actually relook at climate-aligned growth, more affordable housing, and also support job clusters. And it's proven globally that the DCRs, when modernized, they leverage transit, they leverage mixed-use development, which also unleashes the competitiveness in cities, which again leads greatly for economic development. But while the opportunities are clear, there are also risks. The way we are operating, if we continue, again, I think the uniform DCR might push us towards the growth which is in peripheral and outward growing, and locking in dependency on cars and poor walkability, which already is existing in most of the cities. And if we don't rethink our regulations right now, I think the next phase of urbanization in cities might be very exclusionary. It could be shaped by sprawl and a lost economic potential. And one thing I would like to also highlight is one of the biggest risks is also on the institutional capacity itself. There are a recent Niti Aayog report reforms or implementation still stands as a challenge in the cities. So our big idea, is around the framework of where, what, how, where do we sort of unlock growth, and what do we do to refine with respect to reforms that enable this growth, and how do we sort of govern, finance, and enforce these choices. So coming to where, I think our bet is on the 86 cities which are more than 500,000 population. 500,000 population in India, which ideally, if you look at it, they essentially have 40% of the urban population. But if you also consider the 60 kilometers radius around these cities, they have almost, they currently house around 60% of urban population. It's clearly visible that the growth is there. They're pulling in a lot of people. They are going to be the next economic engines. And what is to sort of relook at the root causes and address things like regulatory design, infrastructure and financing, and governance, and also focus a lot on institutional capacities in general. And the how part, ideally we would also use the conversation during the coordinated open session also to sort of bed down on some of these solutions. But I think we're looking at a differentiated approach where 46 million cities have city-wide regulations with differential DCRs for the distinct growth zones. For example, your peripheral areas and your central business districts, where 42 cities with 500,000 to 1 million population also have city-specific DCRs and not just come under the state or unified blanket of regulations. And also anchor these differentiations with strong enforcement and regulations for specially affordable housing, public spaces, and essential services, so that the increased carrying capacity is also sustained. So for this roundtable, we would like to understand on how DCRs can actually help Indian cities balance the four E's in a better way. So how can we unlock economic productivity, build inclusion in the existing current regulatory framework, and also redefine solutions. But we would also want to learn from each other, from the government, from the practitioners, and the market as well, and sort of frame together the right questions which India must answer to sort of look at these reforms from a planning instrument perspective. And this brings us back to some of the open questions for today's roundtable, which we also want to tie it back to the tie the four big ideas to the 4E framework. On under economy, we would like to speak about explore topics like unlocking land value, financing of infrastructure, and also looking at regulations which drive urban competitiveness, and equity on how do we sort of embed equity and inclusivity into planning. Environment, of course, how do you integrate national climate goals into the planning framework. Again, engagement on if the existing systems can be made more transparent, predictable, and responsive to what's happening around. So with this, thank you, and I hand it over to Nithya to start the session.
your case, you forgot to introduce yourself. So I'll do that for you. This is Pravnika. She's the manager at Jana. She handles urban policy. And she kind of leads our work on neighborhood improvement plans. So, it's great to see many friends on the table and some soon-to-be friends. As we have very limited time, I request that each of you keep to 2-3 minutes as we go around, and we'll have several speaking opportunities. And I do not think we'll have time for audience questions though, but we will, we can catch up over lunch, etc. So master plans, the master plans are our strategic visions to articulate intent, and DCRs are what can bring the intent to life. So, to start with, the first question I would ask is to you, Shishir. How can DCRs be redesigned to make land more productive? That is, with our land use, FSI and FAR, then what infrastructure provision is explicitly needed to link this to job creation? We don't have mics.
Sure. So, thank you for inviting me. I feel a little overwhelmed actually, because I'm not a planning specialist, I'm an economist, right? So I want to just bring in or come in from a slightly different lens, which is that this is no longer, where the DCR is right or master plan is right, it's no longer a nice to have. We are at a point where a lot of these things that we are showing, challenges of our city, is actually evident. And I don't know how many of us know, but urban share of GDP is flat since the year 2000. Which means urban per capita productivity is lower than rural per capita. So the correlation that you showed, increase in GDP to urbanization, actually the relationship is far lower now, almost zero. And why this is happening? Because the price of land in India is very high. If you don't get this right, and I did a paper on housing, India has one of the highest, and it translates. So our industrial price, industry is not getting it. I'm not making a case for it. But higher prices translate into, and that causes slower economy. So my submission here is that this is an urgent thing, no longer a nice have. It's a must have. Because otherwise, and these are related. Economy, equity, engagement, these are interrelated. For example, one question on affordability. You have one question on what makes housing affordable and why. The price of land is so high that government is intervening all the time. So I don't think the government, we need to look at the basics of getting the plans to the DCR side so that price of land goes down. And then a lot of these issues will get solved by the market forces. So I'll just stop it. I'll just say that not a nice to have, a must have. Costs are far too evident now than what these metrics suggest. And if we let the market forces play out right regulation, I just stop it.
That brings my related question to you, Dr. Abhijit. How can regulations influence the land prices and vice versa, so that development becomes commercially viable? And if you could throw some light on the trend, both in Ahmedabad and many other cities, of the hollowing out in India. Because of these land prices, we often find that development then chooses to go outside of the cities. Where we come from Bangalore, this is acutely felt. Because the city, if you look at decadal maps of Bangalore's growth, it's pretty much a donut. So it would be good to hear from you on this.
Like to raise two issues. Basically on decentralized participation with respect to this. If you look at Ahmedabad, what Richard is talking, the ratio of EMI to the average income of the people is lowest in the country. It's the lowest amongst the metro towns. One reason for that is that in Ahmedabad, if you look at it, I think the role played by some of the political leaders in ODA, like Surinder Kaga. It was an amazing role which he played. 80 kilometers of ring road which was done, and which could be done because of the excellent capacity and capability of that person, chairman of FODA at that time. He unleashed so much land on the roadside. And I'm also happy to share that most of the land for the road came free. 80% land was free. I think 80% land was free because people were happy to come on the road. And thousands, hundreds of projects came up along that road, which was one major reason why the prices have been reasonably lower in Ahmedabad than in most other metros. My take is that all these four issues which you have raised, the economy, equity, environment and engagement, these are issues which will not happen unless the bureaucrats and the politicians work and the climate members of this side, they work together. This will not happen. So currently in your discourse, the politician is totally out. The mayor has been marginalized. I was just talking to our friend Jagnesh. Do you know the name of the mayor of Ahmedabad? He says, no, I know the name of the municipal commissioner. This is Jagnesh, who is actively participating in all of that. I don't know the name of any of the mayors. And we know the name of mayor of New York. We know the name of mayor of London, Sadiq.
So they have serious power.
No, but that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. We'll have to have people in place. The mayor will have to be given his due role and eminently supported by people like me and people like on this side. Unless that happens, these four things are going to move at a slow pace. Look at this. The urban population of India at the time of independence was only 6 crores. Only 6 crores, 17% of 361 crores. Today, where are we here? 75 crore urban population soon. 60 crore plus. No, are we going to work with the same structures which were there when we had 17% urban population, when now we would have 50 to 60% urban population? We need to look at this governance structure very, very carefully. We need very good experts like this who work in that system. But the entire space will only be created if we have good working mayors in that place. As long as we keep the mayor sideline, the slow pace which Shishir gave the picture, unfortunately will continue.
Very important point. Working with mayors in mayor capacity is one of our pet projects for the last 20 years. But moving on to Jignesh, Ravika mentioned how in the regulations and planning is a one-size-fits-all. What is your opinion on what kind of regulations we need for different types of cities? And if you could throw some light on within a big city, what regulations do we need to support your LAPs and DOT?
I think this is a very, very important question. I think just connecting back with what Shishir was talking about and what Dr. Amarjit Singh was also talking about. So we understand that all of our cities, they have individual characters. Not only characters, but in terms of demand. Demands are different. So demand in Ahmedabad, urban demand in Ahmedabad would be different than demand in Surat would be different than Nadia would be different than Mehsana. And now currently our regulations, you rightly say, Professor rightly say, that our regulations are kind of, one type of regulations fits all kind of approach that we will take. So there is definitely a nuanced approach that we need to take. Actually our act, the planning act, GDPUDA, it actually allows for changing the regulations city by city. And that's how it used to be. It is just very recently, just about 10 years back, probably about 8 years back, is where actually we made common state-wide regulations. Earlier they were city by city. There's a reason for probably making it common, ease of handling things and all that. But what is getting lost is the local demand and how do you respond to the local. That's one. Now, city by city it should be different, but also going beyond that. Typically planners, what they would see is that, okay, there's so much population growth, And for that, you will need so many square meters of floor space in the city. And let's ensure that we have sufficiently high enough FAR so that all that development can happen and supply and demand can probably match and there will be affordability. Unfortunately, what we don't realize is that within the market, within a single city, there are different markets and there are location-based demands. And that's where the variations come. So even if you may have kept like high enough FAR, like 4 FAR for TOD, one part of TOD may have even higher demand than 4, maybe 6, maybe 8, maybe 10. The other part of TOD may have only 2. So now this is where the approach from local area planning perspective and saying that how do we recalibrate our planning so that place-specific regulations, the TOD typology-specific regulations, area-specific regulations can be got in. And then again, when you are talking about FAR, giving higher FAR, it is not just giving higher FAR, but then also taking something from them, meaning how much of land you can take for improving the public domain, improving the streets, improving the infrastructure, and how do we charge that additional FAR. All that would come based on the local supply and demand. You have to play with that. And this is where the differential FAR, differential regulations are absolutely.
Suresh, now coming to you, I know you had mentioned that you're working on some DCRs here. What measurement indicator should we use to judge whether the DCR changes have actually improved land productivity and are not just approvals? Because very often in planning terms, success is now measured in how many building approvals were given.
One of the tricks I learned early on in my career is not to answer the question that is asked. Say whatever you want to say. So I will answer the question. Answer it in different way. So let me start with something very important. The project where we are looking at different Indian cities and seeing how land use happens in the cities. So we take a sample of West Bengal area, small city with big 3 people. So the areas largely 5 or 6 or 7 such areas. And we see how land is being used. That was one of the fundamental questions that I said about land use. And I'll share some early findings from the 13 cities we have done. And what we find is that if you look at Indian cities, there are 2 big problems that you see just by looking at those cities and benchmarking with the counterparts, not just in the development but also in well-functioning development systems. One is that there is too little land in the public, too little in streets, parks, mainly streets, big problem. For 15-16% land is in the form of streets in Indian cities. If you benchmark minimum 25% you see in other well-functioning cities. It's foundational. If you don't have land, then you cannot build at least above the ground infrastructure. You get most in terms of building metros and things. You will have congested streets. You will not have good mobility, and therefore your market will get fragmented. The city is fundamentally a labor market. You always keep saying, if it's fragmented labor market, you don't get the population that the other striking fact about Indian city, which is not comparable with other well-functioning cities, is that almost 40% of the land, 41% for the sample that I'm talking about, is in the form of private open spaces. These are spaces within private plots, but not built upon. And mind you, these are not spaces inside perimeter blocks. They are around, most of them are around freestanding buildings. Not really used so much. I mean, in heavy upmarket society, they use it for parking and a little bit of walking and that kind of space, but not really efficient. And if you put these things together, there's a grand scale inefficiency of land use that you can see, and both are, in a way, because they are out of 100% you're dividing these, there is a trade-off to be made about this. And what is striking is even the new areas that are getting organized, same numbers you see. There very little land is being appropriated for roads and parks, and a lot of land is being put in this kind of format. And if you look back, these are complex phenomena because there is always a market kind of factor to it. There are differences that are unique to the societies and cities. So I'm not going to make a simple argument, but there is a planning story as well. So, for example, appropriation of land for streets is a fundamental planning function. It's the most fundamental function. If you put one function, that is that. Regulation of how building get paid is also a planning function. Yeah, we're talking about. Failure to appropriate 25-30% of the land for public realm, 40% land for public realm is a planning failure. Forcing people to not build on much of the plot that they have is a DCR. We have done a few pieces on this about how you cannot build on more than 55% of the plot. If you're a 1,000 square meter plot, building an 18-meter road, maximum you can build is 58% maximum. Rest you have to leave out for setbacks and margins and for common plots. These are inefficiencies that are built into the DCR. And they are not making an argument that they are irrational. In that local context, their bureaucratic rationality is operating well in the planet right now. What we need is changing of the system in which these things can be avoided. One of the things Jignesh kind of mentioned is a more localized approach to planning and DCR. So if you take an area and say, okay, this area is not developed, how can we improve planning efficiency over the next 20-30 years without destroying property rights? People will redevelop, there will be incentive to redevelop areas of growing countries. In that process, can you find a better balance between private and public wealth and better use of land and the trade-offs that we talked about? In the new areas that are getting urbanized, can we have a better balance? Can you allow to create more land for public purposes so that you have the planning need for the future? You don't develop infrastructure day one, that will come and become richer. We have the bottom 1/3 per capita income, we can't afford all infrastructure in the world. But we can build it out as we go along. But land is there, once it's built up, you can't do much about it. But my main point is that the problem with Indian cities is so fundamental that just tinkering with the margins is not going to go ahead. We need a fundamental rethink on the way urban planning is done. A basic theory of planning has to be thought about. There is an infrastructure theory which is alternative to what's being done today. And then reflect that in the planning laws, planning instruments, planning regulations. Why do you make DCR in the first place? Just making some 1 meter less setback here, 1 meter less setback, more emphasized is not going to cut it. The problem of foundation. And it shows up in many ways, including this phenomenon that more than half of our manufacturing is in rural areas. No great industrial power rose without putting cities in the factories at the heart of cities. Look at the 1990 New York industrial map. Lower Manhattan had garment factories, all of those. Shenzhen, the Ruhr region in Germany, Japan in the mid-20th century. And you can't do that in India because of these kind of problems. Why is not affordable? Because inefficiently used and therefore more expensive to do. Especially labor-intensive cut-throat manufacturing. That requires low-price land. If you go to the hinterland, then not much is happening.
That harness now to you, because a lot of what he said leads directly to development. So Hyderabad, for example, is unlimited deficit. They have the high-tech city, etc. But research also shows that it has rising construction costs, which then gets translated to the user. And a lot of high-rise projects in the recent past have stalled. So from a developer's perspective, what are the risks of regulations being too limited?
मैं अहमदाबाद की अब बात करता हूँ कि जैसे अहमदाबाद में लास्ट 5 years में ऑलमोस्ट 50 to 60 प्रोजेक्ट्स है जो टॉल बिल्डिंग DCR में सैंक्शन हुए। अभी बहुत सारे उसमें से मेरे फ्रेंड्स हैं जो अभी कंस्ट्रक्ट कर रहे हैं, दे हैव मोर देन 60% स्ट्रॉ सर्टिफिकेट बिकॉज अहमदाबाद में जो लोग रह रहे हैं उनकी शायद मेंटालिटी नहीं है कि वो 15 या 20 स्टोरी के ऊपर रहने के लिए जाए। हैदराबाद में शायद वो हो सकता है। सो व्हाट हैपेंड, जैसे जिग्नेश सर ने बताया कि सिटी टू सिटी इट शुड बी डिफर्ड। सो ऑफ कोर्स कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉस्ट ज़्यादा बहुत इंक्रीज होती है। मुझे जो बताना है एक्चुअली हम बात कर रहे हैं लैंड और सिटी के बारे में, दैट इज ओके, बट पूरी जब आते हैं फोर की तो बॉटम ऑफ पिरामिड जो लोग हैं जिनके साथ घर नहीं है उसके बारे में हम लोग बात करेंगे कि उनके लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं। तो सर ने बताया कि सुरेंद्र काका ने जैसे 75 किलोमीटर के रोड पे पूरा अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग का पूरा जोन डिक्लेयर कर दिया, बट एक्चुअली इट कैटर्स द सप्लाई, इज इट सो? इस डेवलपर मैं खुश हूँ, मेरी काफी जमीन है जो डायरेक्ट RH पे आ गई है, तो एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड भी इसमें थी, इंडस्ट्रियल लैंड भी थी जो डायरेक्ट हो रही रेसिडेंशियल अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग जोन, तो मेरी जमीन के भाव बहुत बढ़ गए। बट एक्चुअली इज इट लिवेबल? इफ यू सी अहमदाबाद इज अ रेडिकल डेवलपमेंट, राइट? सो आप एट द मीन्स पेरीफेरी आप RAS डिक्लेयर करके एक तरफ लोगों को मीन्स जो लोगों को एक्चुअली घर की जरूरत है उनको आप धकेल रहे हो बिकॉज ऑफ लैंड, ऑफ कोर्स लैंड। बट नाउ इट इज वो अफोर्डेबिलिटी भी नहीं रही है, वो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग भी शायद 70-80 लाख के हो गए, जो एक्चुअली आप ऑटो पिरामिड की बात करो तो उनके लिए भी वो सही नहीं है। अब मैं बात बताता हूँ कि जैसे गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसर्स की मैं बहुत ऐसे माय पर्सनल जैसे बड़ी अच्छी पॉलिसी काम करी है गुजरात में, जो पुराने पब्लिक हाउसिंग जो है उसको रिडेवलप करके वहाँ पे नए बना रहे हैं। तो जब पॉलिसी 2016 में आई तब वो बात कर रहे थे मेन 3 कंपोनेंट्स, जो एग्जिस्टिंग यूनिट्स थे उनको रिडेवलपमेंट कर रहा था, एडिशनल अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग बनाने थे, और थर्ड कंपोनेंट इज फ्री सेल कंपोनेंट, जो सब्सिडाइज होगा डेवलपर को दोनों कंपोनेंट के बाद जो मिलेगा उसके साथ में। अभी क्या हुआ, ऑलरेडी 6 से 7 टेंडर फ्लोट हो चुके थे। वन ऑफ द फर्स्ट टेंडर वाज माइन इन सूरत, इट इज अबाउट 1800 यूनिट्स। अभी क्या हुआ, जब गुजरात हाउसिंग ये बेसिकली पब्लिक हाउसिंग डेवलपमेंट यानी AMC यानी सूरत म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन, अहमदाबाद म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन, उनके भी जो स्टाफ पार्टनर्स है उनको भी वो रिडेवलप कर सकते हैं अंडर दिस पॉलिसी, राइट। अब गुजरात हाउसिंग बोर्ड के ऐसे यूनिट्स बाहर आए टेंडर्स। अब हुआ क्या कि काफी डेवलपर्स को पता नहीं चला कि उसमें बीड किस तरह से करनी है, यानी एडिशनल यूनिट नंबर्स ऑफ एडिशनल यूनिट देने या टोटल कारपेट एरिया एडिशनल देने। अब हुआ क्या, तो उसके वजह से टेंडर हो गया, मींस फिर से उन्होंने बाहर निकाला, फिर भी किसी ने बना दिया। उसके बाद उन्होंने गवर्नमेंट में लेटर लिखा कि इन द पॉलिसी देयर इज एम्बिग्यूटी, उनको समझ नहीं आ रहा है कि बीड कैसी करनी है। तो 6 से 7 टेंडर ऑलरेडी अलॉट हो चुके थे, उन्होंने सूरत म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन में किसी को पूछने की भी जरूरत नहीं, और लास्ट में एज पर गुजरात स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने वो कंपोनेंट निकाल दिया जो एडिशनल अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग बनाने का था। एक्चुअली वो कंपोनेंट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट था। एज अ प्लानर जिसने भी ये पॉलिसी बनाई थी, बहुत सोच के बनाई थी कि जो पोटेंशियल लैंड से अंदर, मैं ऐसे बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, बहुत सारी जगह है अहमदाबाद सिटी में जो ये पुराने क्वार्टर्स है जिसमें FSI अंडर यूटिलाइज थी, तो वहाँ पे ये एक्चुअली एडिशनल यूनिट्स जो बनते हैं वो बॉटम ऑफ पिरामिड्स को जो लोग हैं उनको यानी 6 लाख 10 लाख 12 लाख, क्योंकि उसमें लैंड कंपोनेंट नहीं आता, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट वो कंस्ट्रक्ट करके दे रही है, तो उनको मिल पाता था। तो अब थाउजेंड्स ऑफ यूनिट्स आपने यहाँ से निकाल दिए, और अभी आप बात कर रहे हो कि अब हम अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग किस तरीके से बनाएं। तो मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि देयर शुड बी थिंकिंग कि ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ आप DCR में आपने कोई पॉलिसी रख दी या DCR में ये जोन कर दिया तो वो अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग बन जाएगी, और वहाँ पे भी मार्केट, तो ऑफ कोर्स मेरी जैसे लैंड है तो मेरे दूसरी लैंड है बाजू में, तो हमारी भी मार्केट में तो लैंड की प्राइस बढ़ती जाएगी जैसे जैसे कम होती जाएगी। तो एक्चुअली एज पर माय रिव्यू वो अफोर्डेबिलिटी है नहीं, एक्चुअली सिर्फ है जोन है एज पर माय।
Thanks for being so candid. Dr. Vijay, moving from the equity lens to the environmental lens, what measurable regulatory tools can we use as part of the regulations so that we can have sustainable growth? Or because we have every state as well as the center, we have net zero targets, but we also have heat/, we have climate action plans, and while there is a lot of material research, it's not yet mainstream, especially for the vulnerable communities. So what can regulations do for sustainable growth?
Good. So I will actually talk about that considering the case of Gujarat is considered one of the model state for the plan, and we have the very good mechanism of the DPD for town planning and DPD and DPD means a development plan and master plan is a more or less satellite agreement. And if you see this that analyze and even we make the that how to forward with this DP. Even Ahmedabad is struggling for the last 3 years to finalize the development plan, still not able to do that. The reason being that if they are putting that where are the water bodies and how it's more that if we see the proposal of for your DP scheme, say you will see on the drain itself, it's a water course and you are converted into that it's easier for the town planning officer to put the road on the that this drain. So that when we were discussing when this is the Gujarat was celebrating the urban development year, this year is the urban development year, and that even Jignesh was the part of that Gujarat High Level Committee for the planning. So we found the three things, particularly in the next aspect of the plan. See, for the sake of discussion, like say the volume 3 of the comprehensive development control regulation, we have put something about green blue, development. But we are not really implementing in we are not planning the TP scheme on the Z axis. We are doing the X and Y. That horizontally what we will do that, what we will do that. We will just see the very good pictures of the sponsity in the China. But what we will do that we are not discussing. We say that there are the number of vehicles added every day in the city and every second. Now yesterday it was came about the every 20 seconds the one car is coming in the Gujarat. So, but we are not discussing that how to promote the public transport system, walk and cycling and that. If we are preparing the that corridor of the cycling NMP, and then we are scrapping the because the beggars are making is their night shelter, and that is why it's not. So if the people will not implement it that and everywhere the three that out of four, the fourth one is very important. Okay, we are not calling the people how to deal with this. They even DP that whenever they are preparing the DP, they will discuss with the intellectual people, but they will not really go to the real people. Even if you see the smart city proposal or Amrut city, so what is the planning cannot become with the 92 questions. It requires a lot of plus and minus. And we are saying we are creating the process. So we have to focus on this 4 things and we are continuously following from the Gujarat High Level Committee. Because I am also assisting the principal secretary here as well. So it's also our responsibility because today Arpal is not there. Otherwise he can say no. And the one first thing is the economy. Because end of the day, you see the economy of the city, but it's not on the destroying the environment. We are forgetting climate change. We are that. In Gujarat, there are a lot of their NGOs are also supporting villa housing. So the developing that rejection plan or something. But if we see the real people are getting that environment or not, you have to rightly ask question that we should plan because that we are passing through the revising the development. So climate action is really should put
My next question is to you on linking DCRs to transport policy. I know we've spoken in the past on linking land use and transport plans right now this Saturday. But how can DCRs be linked to transport policy to reduce car dependency and what kind of parking norms should we have in BOD, etc. and active mobility policy?
I'll take your process and start from a different point and then come to answering your question. So we've talked a lot about affordability, which is actually सबसे ज़्यादा fundamental चीज़ है इसमें. And the metrics is that 70% of India is below the age of 30. Are we designing for these youngsters? ये जो youngsters हैं वो घर नहीं खरीदना चाहते. आज दिल्ली में है, कल मुंबई में है, परसों गुड़गांव में है, परसों लंदन में है. उनको घर नहीं खरीदना. लेकिन उनको अच्छा घर चाहिए. उनको चाहिए कि हम रात को घूमने जाए, पैसा खर्च करें, काफ़ी कमा रहे हैं हम. लेकिन क्या हम शहर को उनके लिए बना रहे हैं? So that is our client. I think coming from an architecture and planning background, हम लोग client का समझते हैं. And I think हर planner को और हर government के officer को भी, मैं खुद government officer थी 15 साल के, and I'm now quite enjoying private sector. So I understand the challenges that are there on the government side. But I think हर government officer को client remember करना चाहिए कि मेरा client कौन है. हमारे केस में client है 70% लोग जो 30 के उम्र से कम हैं और फिर ऑफ कोर्स एजेड लोग भी हैं और दूसरे लोग भी हैं जिनको हमें रिजल्ट करना है शहरीकरण में. सो दैट्स नंबर 1. नंबर 2 देन वी कम टू द पॉइंट ऑफ हाउसिंग कि ये 30% लोग को हाउसिंग. अब दिल्ली देखो, अहमदाबाद तो मैं इतना नहीं जानती, लेकिन दिल्ली में ये सारे लोग रह रहे हैं भैरोली में, गणेश नगर में, unauthorized colonies. The जो planned land market है और developer driven housing है, वो सिर्फ I think maybe ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा मैं बोलूँ तो it is dealing with 10%. I don't think it is even 10%, but ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा 10%. So the whole population is either living in slums or unauthorized colonies or what we call urban villages in Delhi. It's almost the same in Mumbai, maybe worse. Mumbai में the unauthorized colonies are slums. I'm not so sure about Ahmedabad. I haven't studied Ahmedabad so much. लेकिन क्या हमारे youngsters को respectable housing का हक नहीं है? क्या हमें यहीं पे रहना है? And I count myself as a youngster. I still want to live in a nice house and I don't want to buy a bungalow. So coming from this passion, जब मैं DDA में थी, मैंने कहा कि the problem कहाँ पे है, कहीं पे तो solution होगा. तो हमने number crunch किए, जो कि developers बहुत अच्छा करते हैं. तो we put on the developers hat and उस टाइम पे railways में थी. तो बहुत सारे डेवलपर्स को हमने बोला कि भाई हम आपको FAR दे रहे हैं, आपको फ्लेक्सिबल DCR दे रहे हैं, जो हम बातें कर रहे हैं हम सब दे रहे थे, लेकिन कोई भी अफोर्डेबल हाउसिंग नहीं बनाना चाह रहा था. कह रहे कि नहीं हम तो 2 BHK 3 BHK ही बनाएंगे, वो भी स्टेशन के सामने. सो वी कुड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई. तो फिर हमने नंबर्स क्रंच करे. नंबर्स क्रंच करके हमें पता चला कि कल्प्रिट्स क्या क्या है. सबसे बड़ा कल्प्रिट जो है वो है लैंड का सर्कल रेट, जो कि शायद जंतरी रेट बोलते हैं. उससे लैंड का जो वैल्यू है वो आर्टिफिशियली इंक्रीज हो जाता है. और वो मुझे पता है कि गवर्नमेंट को पैसा चाहिए अपने उसके लिए, लेकिन हमें एज अ गवर्नमेंट हमें ये भी देखना है कि पैसा कहाँ से कमाना है. बहुत सारे जैसे क्या हो सकता है, हम जस्ट एन एग्जांपल, maybe we can increase taxes on something else and decrease the housing rate. I'm just putting out the idea. I'm not saying this is the thing, but culprit number 1 ये निकला. दूसरा culprit निकला low FAR, और ये हमने मेट्रोस के लिए किया था. तो I think it may not be a big culprit in tier 2 cities, but in metros FAR, low FAR is a very big culprit, which causes increased per capita value of land on the plot. तीसरा culprit निकला parking norms, क्योंकि ये भी सिंपल मैथ है, आपको नंबर्स करने की भी जरूरत नहीं है. आपका एक घर का साइज जो है 25 स्क्वायर मीटर है या 35 स्क्वायर मीटर है, और आपका पार्किंग का साइज 25 स्क्वायर मीटर है. So for every house that you're buying, if you want to buy a 1 BHK studio apartment, you have to buy another brother with you. Even if you don't have a car, you have to buy that. It's like package deal. You're forced to buy a car space. And car space क्योंकि often basements में होती है, तो उसका cost भी ज़्यादा होता है. तो एक घर का cost अगर 10 रुपए पर स्क्वायर फीट है, पार्किंग का cost 20 से 25 रुपए पर स्क्वायर फीट भी ज़्यादा है. तो ये तीसरा कल्प्रिट था. चौथा जो कल्प्रिट था वो निकला इंटरेस्ट रेट ऑन लोन EMI, जो कि अभी 7 है और हर साल थोड़ा थोड़ा बढ़ जाता है. अभी एक तरफ हम कह रहे हैं कि हाउसिंग नहीं है, और दूसरी तरफ हम हर साल EMI का रेट बढ़ा रहे हैं. तो ये I know these don't relate to DCRs, but these are very fundamental things that the government needs to look at in a very holistic way. There is no point just discussing aimlessly and not understanding what are the problems. And I want to end with one thing to answer your question, but I'll give you an example of the Karkarduma project, which is next to a train station. तो उसमें हमने DCR भी सॉल्व करे. EDA का प्रोजेक्ट है, it's one of the first TOT projects in Delhi. तो हमने DCR सही कर दिए, प्लानिंग नॉर्म्स चेंज कर दिए, मास्टर प्लान चेंज कर दिया, सब कर दिया. लेकिन जब वो बनने गया तो आर्किटेक्ट को नहीं पता था कि TOD स्कीम कैसे बनाना है. उसको ठीक है, वो बिल्ड टू एज बना रहा है, एक्टिव स्ट्रीट बना रहा है, उसने सारे दुकान और वो जो है फ्रेशर्स वो कोर्टयार्ड के अंदर फेसिंग करके जबकि रोड बना है. उसको नहीं समझ आया कि एक्टिव स्ट्रीट कैसे बनाना. लैंडस्केप पर्सन कुड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड कि उस प्लान में था कि देयर वाज अ कंटीन्यूअस, जो सर बात कर रहे थे कि ऑफ हैविंग स्कंक सिटीज एंड हैविंग वाटर कैचमेंट. तो हमने पूरा ना ओरिजिनल प्लान में इंटरलिंक्ड वाटर सिस्टम्स बनाए थे, पार्क्स को नहीं करते थे. लेकिन वो लैंडस्केप वाले को नहीं समझ आया कि इसका क्या. तो इसका जो निचोड़ में ये कह रही हूँ कि इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट दैट डिपार्टमेंट वर्क टुगेदर, but it's equally important that the planning discourse shifts and becomes inclusive of all technocrats. And I think bureaucrat, politician and technocrat, these three sit together in New York. That's why New York changed. So Amanda Burton, Janet Sadiq Khan, ये टेक्नोक्रेट्स भी थे और ब्यूरोक्रेट्स भी थे, और मेयर के साथ उन्होंने बहुत अच्छा काम करा. तो टेक्नोक्रेट को आप बिठाइए टेबल पे, उनको अकाउंटेबल करिए कि नहीं ठीक हुआ तो आपकी गलती है. और इस टेक्नोक्रेट में सब आता है, सिर्फ प्लानर नहीं, has to have the landscape architect, the urban designer, the architect, the utility guy, the infrastructure guy, the engineer, everybody has to.
Economist also.
And it
Are you done? Yes. No, I think it goes back to what you originally said, is the what needs to be done. Perhaps most of it make it, even the technocrats, even the bureaucrats. But the how is not that. So thanks for shedding some light on that. My next question is both to Shishir and Jignesh, one after the other. As we're talking about FAR being so important, that we need to densify, we need to go high-rise, a lot of environmentalists have opposing views, saying that if we do densify, if we do go high-rise, while it will help economic growth, it's really bad for the city. But the alternate needs strong. You can't endlessly grow horizontal. So it would be good if, from the economist point of view and a sensitive planning point of view, to shed some light on that. Sorry, also the infrastructure needs, like do we pump higher or do we pump down?
So I'm thinking first principles here, right? If we plan well, see currently I think our FARs are low, right? So we may not want to go to the levels which are there in Hong Kong and Singapore, but I don't think there is a case for not improving from where we are currently. Now second is, now what pressure does it bring on the existing on environment? And if you invest in these cities, I mean, this is not a free lunch. आपने FAR increase कर दिया, then you don't invest in, for example, water collection. So it goes hand in hand, right? Which is that our FARs are good. We need to increase. And it's not a free lunch, so if you invest back in the city, I think the degradation can be taken care of. So that is at least my first principles thinking, because of where we are. If you don't mind, I've been thinking about this governance thing. So, because I think a lot of what is probably known. It is the how which is the real bottleneck. So, I would love to get Mr. Singh's reflection. I think empowered mayor probably will take us forever. But do you think that a stable 5-year tenure empowered commissioner can be a second best? And if yes, then why are we not doing that? So this is just, I'm just curious, I've been thinking about it. So any quick reflections over here?
Stable tenure definitely, as in Gujarat. We have a fairly good tenure in Gujarat. But I think look at the way in which Ahmedabad is going. Ahmedabad is not going to be within Ahmedabad, within your plans. Ahmedabad is going to, I mean, for those of you who come from outside, you're going to Kadipalur suburb, Changodar, another suburb, Bareja, another suburb, Katla, Degam, another suburb. At the bureaucratic level, that agility is just not there to tap those areas quickly. Where market is going in those areas. People who can't afford the house within the city, they go into those areas. We need that agility to quickly tap those areas. At least make sure that there is some drawing on the ground which says this is a road, this is what. You can't construct on that. That is not happening. So, I think we should definitely give it a try in some cities to bring it the requisite networking and agility. The second part which you raised, I think that's a very interesting question. I come from Chandigarh. I've been here in Gujarat all my life. There's a lake there in the foothills of the lower Himalayas. And it gets flooded sometimes. But they've done it so nicely. There is a nala through the city. Right? It goes to all the most of the sectors. And all the garden areas are across that nala. And they do so well. They always green, always water, and they were never flooding in the town. I lived there 20-30 years of my life, early life, never flooding. I think we need to look at how the two can be dovetailed, the natural, whether it's a nala or tributary of a river or whatever, and the gardens. It has added some spice to Chandigarh's life, those gardens. By good use of the lake water, overflow of the lake water.
I think it's very, very important what sir is talking about. And just coming back to the question that, I'm connecting it back. On one side you are talking about economics, supply and demand. On the other side you are talking about environment. And just imagine, I'm just, free imagination. If there was no zoning and absolutely no regulations. And we were purely going on the economics of supply and demand. Okay. Now, what will happen then is that the demand, ultimately the people are going to make choices of where to look. The demand is going to go where there are currently some amenities there. Or there are currently some good features there, like lakes or this or that. So, it's never a simple, plain, blank slate. That slate always has some amenities, some attraction points, gravity points, etc. That's where the demand is. Now, a challenge for a planner is that how do you mold that demand through additional features like metro, like providing roads, like providing amenities. Where do you locate those amenities so that the demand gets molded at the right places? And you won't continue to destroy the places which were supposed to be natural places. So now this is where the whole planning game is, and a lot of times I see some liberal planners or liberally thinking people would say, let it be on the market. But what is market? Market is ultimately about people are making choices, and that's what creates the market demand. So where would you want people to make right kind of choices, and how do you mold that market through planning decisions? Is how we need to think.
Why do you have to mold the choices here? What's the reason for molding the choice? I want to go to a particular place.
Yeah.
So the system should work in a manner that those amenities are created there.
Absolutely.
Or I'm charged for it.
That is molding.
Huh?
Creating the.
That's what molding. Molding is saying you prepare a DCR area, there you prepare a development plan or a urban planning scheme, and people stay there.
No.
People are,
I'm suggesting is the other way around. That not even at TP level, at your development plan level, there are certain decisions that you are going to make in terms of providing certain amenities there, or there is a lake, developing that lake or developing around that. There's going to be some decisions that the authorities are going to make. So where do you make those investments? And that is going to start molding the choices of people.
that's exactly what I was saying in earlier point. People have not bothered about your plans. They've gone to the surrounding areas because the cost is much lower.
Because
But we have nothing there. So that also has to be kept in mind. They have not bothered about the good infrastructure or thing. They just go to Katla or Marija or Changodar or wherever.
Frankly, because they want greener environment. They want to escape from the cities and all that.
Or affordability.
More affordability.
Affordability is a major factor.
Choose green, but just moving on.
एक छोटा सा point और था, we were talking about high-rise buildings. I was reading one of their articles on the during actually that early. If you take a 3,000 square yard plot of land, you do a 15-story building, the margin is about 35%. If you do 30-story building, 30-meter building, the margin is 48%. In Ahmedabad, it is 48% margin. And the result is that if you do a 15-meter high building, you use 58% of the land. If you do a 30-meter high building, you use only 40% of the land. I think those things are really need to be tracked.
That's the maximum you can use. That is our article.
Very nicely written. Very nicely written. It's really striking.
This is what they're molding the choices. You should have a Commonwealth plot. You should have, margin setback. Whether you want them or not is not their interest. You should have them. But a realistic approach to.
The high-rise building, you have a common plot, even there you need a margin.
This is imported from US.
They are now faster.
Yeah,
Just moving on to Shrestha, who's been very patient. Thanks, Shrestha. India aspires to be a $10 trillion dollar economy. And why must planning be focused and not just infra spending? Because currently we are all obsessed with infra spending and every announcement we see is on infra spending. But why must investment in planning reforms become really important to get to this action?
Because focusing on infra needs is not working. Focusing on projects is actually not working. That's why we need to focus on planning reform. I think everybody's already said everything that I wanted to say, so I'm just going to basically summarize, right? The end goal for us is not just economic growth, but it's political growth. That's what we're aspiring to. It's an economic growth that Shishir had already pointed out. Urban GDP has been stagnant, right? But it's still contributing 60% to India's GDP with 3% plan. If you have to have sustained economic growth, you have to work on that. Like you said, it's not a nice city, it has to be done. Unlocking that is going to happen through deregulation, land use regulations. That's the way to go about it. French PCS, the way we think of zonation, all of that is critical because without that, the economics just doesn't work. Markets don't work. And the way governments think, right, the approach to regulation is that let's regulate everything so that nothing goes wrong. That in itself needs to change because you regulate what really needs to regulate. You need to regulate for preventing market fairness. That's the end goal of regulation. You let people decide. Essentially, even today, people are deciding where they want to live, basis affordability, basis where their jobs are. You have to allow for that to happen. You have to allow for densification of the whole area because essentially, if you kind of free up the way land happens, you are allowing for businesses to decide where it makes the most amount of sense. Once businesses decide where it makes the most amount of sense, labor moves in. Once that happens, you automatically are creating engines of economic growth. That's what needs to be done. And even in terms of planning reforms, right? It's also how your master plans also need to be linked to the way cities are actually spending. You need to create that linkage between where land is. My master plan is laying out a 10-15 vision of what I need as a city. Beyond land use, it's also about what kind of infrastructure we require. But when you see it, how a city is actually spending at the moment, there's little to no linkage with what the master plan is about. It's what money is available within my central government scheme, what money is available within my state government scheme. So we are not working towards that vision. That's also a problem. And it's also, I mean, things like the fact that there is no decentralization, the fact that the city government is not really a government, it's more a local body. All of those things would need to be fixed. And for us to also look at planning reforms, not just from that lens, integration of planning and finance. That's what needs to happen for that $10 trillion economy.
Just a follow-up question to you. What, and you don't have to be very detailed, but what financial frameworks for land-based financing or revenues like property tax, investment, PPP, bonds, can we explore to make these land-based planning reforms implemented?
I think that's also already been covered in the form of FAR, right? Like if a Mumbai has done purchasable FSI, obviously it has its drawbacks. But essentially you're saying base FSI, base loan space index, and you have, everybody has the same. You can, above and beyond, you can think of purchasable FSI. That can be built differently. Like essentially the purchase could be either in cash or it could be in time. Give me affordable housing units to get that purchasable FSI, then that's one solution. Or just plow back whatever that purchasable FSI is to ensure that infra projects get financed. Even today, the land value capture financing, everybody knows, but unfortunately beyond an Ahmedabad, beyond a Gujarat and a Maharashtra, there's very little in terms of town planning scheme, land pooling, land strategic land management. Those possibilities exist. It essentially requires the intersection of will, incentives, capacities, all that play, and of course regulatory frameworks to allow city governments to operate that operate. And even cities are actually levying development charges, but unfortunately what's happening is that money is getting collected, is not getting plowed back to infrastructure projects. is not actually, it's supposed to be for investing back into the infrastructure that the cities need. That's not happening. There's no accountability that is being set in place for that. So financial frameworks exist, instruments exist. It's just the marrying of all those things at a systems level that needs to happen to make it happen.
Sorry, one point I want to make. This is from RERA. We analyze the data when it was said, where are the projects coming up? 80% of the projects are coming up in already existing towns. Ahmedabad, Baroda, Surat, Rajkot, Jamnagar, Bhavnagar. Cities which are growing at 70%, 60% per decade, hardly any projects. So I think it's very, very important for the government to come out with some, ensure there are some employment opportunities in those towns. Otherwise, what you're talking will keep on happening. Those people, 50% increase in population, it's going to come back to Ahmedabad, going to come back to Baroda, Surat, and you will have all these problems over and over again. So, if you can create some opportunity by identifying those areas, actually you made this point, there's no land. There is land where population is growing, but there is no employment opportunity. That is helpful. With this,
Thank you so much. We're also quickly wrap up. Anand, the next question is to you. What incentives and reforms as a developer would promote the developer's interest in making all of this viable, and specifically for inclusive and sustainable growth, because you mentioned affordable housing.
Yes.
Because just these regulations will not work, right? You need some incentives.
Actually, what happens, if you look at the definition of affordable housing, at the view of central CGST department, then our RERA, then our local GCM, and income tax to have benefits of ID. So definition of affordable housing is changes all over. So actually मुझे एक आप स्क्रीन करोगे तो बेसिकली जो इनकम टैक्स की सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है इनकम टैक्स, ठीक है? तो इनकम टैक्स की डेफिनेशन के हिसाब से मेरा जो प्रोजेक्ट रहेगा वो वायबल नहीं, बिकॉज ऑफ ऊपर जो ओवरलैप आप कर रहे हो अलग-अलग डेफिनेशंस, ठीक है? तो मैं ऐसा बता रहा हूँ कि एक तो एक सिस्टम होनी चाहिए जो डेफिनेशन हर जगह पे सेम होनी चाहिए, फर्स्ट। सेकंड, आपको एज अ गवर्नमेंट इंसेंटिव देने की डेवलपर को कोई जरूरत नहीं है, बिकॉज जो भी आप इंसेंटिव डेवलपर को दे रहे हो वो पास करेगा कि नहीं पास करेगा वो डिपेंड्स ऑन सप्लाई डिमांड मार्केट। सो डोंट गिव एनी इंसेंटिव टू डेवलपर, बिकॉज इफ यू गिव मोर एफएसआई, ठीक है, वो ज्यादा यूनिट्स बनाएगा तो उसकी जो प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी रहेगी वो उसके हिसाब से बढ़ेगी, तो वो पास ऑन नहीं करने वाला है। द थिंग, आप उनको कुछ मत दो, आप जो भी एंड यूजर्स है उनके लिए कुछ कर सकते हो तो करो, अदरवाइज जो सिस्टम है उसको सेम करने की ट्राई करो। आपको डेवलपर को कोई इंसेंटिव देने की जरूरत नहीं, बिकॉज इट्स सप्लाई डिमांड में चल रहा है मार्केट।
Can I just come in with 5 seconds? Also, I think there is no case to my mind for India to push for housing ownership for everyone.
Yes.
There is no, I don't know what, there is no justification for it. So I think we need to make land affordable, let market decide. I think that should create enough stock, enough type of housing for everyone. I think we are spending far too much money and energy in trying to give housing.
We break that aspiration of everyone owning a house and a vehicle. I think all our problems. Right now, our vehicle ownership also, you were just mentioned every 20 seconds, that's because that aspiration is so strong, right?
We are not giving subsidies. Aspiration fine, but state is not giving subsidy for letting people own vehicles. State is giving subsidy for.
Actually, it is the form of free roadside parking and those things. Don't charge you for the real estate.
And we don't charge for parking.
That's it. Major subsidy for that.
एक्चुअली रेंटल हाउसिंग कंपोनेंट के लिए भी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसी है, पर वो वर्क नहीं कर पा रही है बिकॉज ऑफ दिस 4 or 5 countries.
Suresh, my next question is to you, is how can DCRs protect community rights while balancing? Because someone had mentioned, I think it was Manan, how they get I may be a person living in the city center, but due to gentrification and due to land value increasing, every generation I'm moving out till I'm living 60-70 kilometers from the city. So how can we really protect that?
Which rights?
I mean, there are no rights there. But for how do we use regulations to ensure that there are? So for example, if I'm an economically weaker section of the city and my jobs are in the city center, and of course there are some regulations that say 25% of the house, 30%, some percentage that counts. But eventually, I do sell my property. And then if you look at a path, I read a study, if you look at a path of migrant settlers or economically weaker section, every generation they jump 10 kilometers. So they would have started off at the city center, but now their family, 4 generations down, lives much in the city.
So, it so happened to be that we moved into a city. It was not a major growth hub and not much. We were able to get a house closer to the city center. As the city grows, the demand composition changes and your house becomes very crack. I can give you an example. We've done a case study of redevelopment of cess buildings in Bombay. And what happens is that some of those buildings were rented by lower middle income people, so they were basically very dilapidated buildings. And when the redevelopment happens, obviously the owners get flats in that, in lieu of the apartment they had. The new apartment gets built over another person for the free sale component. And obviously the people who rented the house would no longer. For the city, it's great to have more floor space. Productivity will go up in that space. So we shouldn't look at it in this way that there's no predestined level of poverty in a city. Somebody may be a low middle income. If we have enough vibrant economy and enough opportunity, then in a generation they can jump up also. Like somebody who is born in a low middle income household and they become a investment banker as a child. I mean, we do have that. As an economy becomes more vibrant and more opportunities get created, there's no shortcut to that. It's a tragic fact of life that if a city becomes rare, you're not on that bandwagon, then you will keep or you consume less floor space. Stay close to the city center, but consume less floor space. Pack yourself in a small cubicle apartment. You should allow for these possibilities. There's no shortcut to this. Life is like that. We are a low middle income country. Trade-offs have
I mean, we can come back to that later, but okay, we're almost done. I just have one last question for Romi, and then I would just wanted to for you, Romi, is on based on Google estimates and density versus livability, flexibility versus certainty, market efficiency versus social equity. What do global cities make? How do they make these trade-offs, and what can India learn from that?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking of a global example only linked to your question that you just asked previously. So, one of the very big examples is Vancouver. They tried to reverse the housing trend by forcing the DCR to be very housing dominated in the downtown of Vancouver. Now, they did not look at, somebody mentioned, Sir Ramanjit sir mentioned about creating jobs. So, when the housing density went up in downtown, the jobs went outside Vancouver. So then again the guys who were working in those job centers shifted out of downtown. So the downtown became for rich people. So I think the key thing in planning is looking at jobs housing balance. It sounds very theoretical, but it's very important to figure out ways of bringing in investment so that you're not just looking at houses, you're also looking at jobs. That's one example. London has done the same thing, and I'll be very honest, other than Vancouver, every city I have visited, and I do this thing when I visit any city, that I take a bus from the center of the city, I go to the outskirts. It generally goes from the center to the periphery. So in every global city, the lower income is living outside. Shanghai was the only city where I saw that the quality of public infrastructure, amenities, was at par with downtown Shanghai in the outskirts of Shanghai. So basic amenities were the same, but your land value was still less. Every other city, whether it's London or Paris or any place, any other place, you will see that the quality of infrastructure will fall when it goes to the poorer areas. And also in Shanghai, because I lived there, so my cook, she used to come from one of these colonies, and she used to take bus. So the metro also would go to her place, and the bus also would go. She would always choose to take the bus because it was cheaper. If it was cheaper, she did not mind taking the bus. But she has an amazing bus service. So I'm here, I often sit in meetings and I hear that why do we need to air condition buses? Because the impression is that it's not the upper middle class that is using the bus. But no, why doesn't the lower middle class deserve a bus service? So if you give those fundamental amenities, which are really not expensive for the government, these are very basic things. Just have the same standards for parks, footpaths and buses. And people are happy, they are not suffering. So, and the market will be, I think to summarize, the market is real. Land value is a real problem. And I think forcing करेंगे तो वो Vancouver वाला problem भी हो सकता है. It can go wrong. So let's give the basic infrastructure to a high standard, an equitable standard, and people can choose where they want to live. Whether it's a small house in central city or it's a big house when you have a family, you move out. I don't know to answer your question.
Thanks everyone. I know we started late, so we're running out of time. If I can just take 30 seconds and ask all of you to, like we just go on a quick rapid fire. If I had one silver bullet to fix the issues we spoke about, either the what or the how, or a vacant pass in terms of governance, what would it be? So if we can start with Romi and just go around.
Take a time period.
Then
See, I feel that I since have spent 10-15 years in the government, you don't need to change anything, you need to get the right people inside the government. So the guy who's leading the Ernst & Youngs and the KPMGs, does he want to work in the government? No. So you answer that question, solve that question, get the best rate. Will Jignesh ever go and help? Will he? I don't know. So, see, he's saying no. So, get the best guys attracted, and this is the Singapore model. सब पूछते हैं Singapore model क्या है? Singapore का सिर्फ यही model है कि they attract their diaspora back to come back to their country and work in the government at senior positions. And they do everything, and nobody can challenge the power of the government. We cannot, none of us can do what the government does. So unless we get inside, it's not change.
Let governments decide and let citizens also have a voice. Decentralized governance and decentralized council.
There are no silver bullets. But one, if you want to shift from this current input and procedural approach to more outcome driven, then ask planners how much land did you appropriate from streets and parks in the last 1 year, how much road bill got added in the last 1 year in the street. Ask those kind of questions rather than what you put a master plan.
So even like say I was associated with like a number of institutes, and what I'm finding is like so the quality of education is deteriorating. And like said that it's a, like say and more will be ChatGPT. This is AI. This is like say, and I'm finding it like say very difficult like say that next even a simple like said what we are finding is like say that even the more infrastructure and quality of like say that infrastructure what we are seeing, and in the like say Gujarati this year our budget is spent 30,000 crore from the state and not able to stand this money because like say that and she's right, it's like say that you should bring the people in government in the best way and the best people in the like say offering the best people, but when and how, because like say that you improve your like say quality of education, it will automatically. You will not find the SAP university anymore. But like say that, why not? Like say that here in Gujarat more than 25,000 engineers are there. If I want to like say that, even just I was discussing with the logistics like say that when we were like say kids, the like say Chanda Mama was the very like say small like say that the magazine came on the same day we were like say completed. Now, what is that? Maybe I thought like say that Because like say over a period of time, like say you have a very good mind of like say youngster, but like say that mind is like say they're working on it. Even like say that yesterday I was seeing that like say the PMs like say one WhatsApp university can say it was about this. Its people is are spending the 7 to 8 hours in the like say the screen.
स्टेक होल्डर कंसल्टेशन यानी जो पॉलिसी मेकर जो है जिसके लिए पॉलिसी बना रहा है और जो इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहा है उसको वो पॉलिसी यानी 2 साल 3 साल 5 साल के बाद क्या इश्यूज आ रहे हैं तो एक जो ब्रीज जो गैप जो है वो ब्रीज करने के लिए जो भी प्रोसीजर है वो करनी चाहिए। यहाँ पे नहीं होती पॉलिसी बन गई वो चल रही है प्रॉब्लम्स आ रहे हैं फिर भी टेंडर नहीं आएंगे ये पर काम आगे नहीं होगा। तो एक जो रिफ्रेशर कोर्स या कुछ भी आप बताओ तो स्टेक होल्डर कंसल्टेशन होना चाहिए।
Saying, we need right kind of people at the right places, but for that, so that Ruby can continue to stay where she was, we need to have the right kind of institutional framework. Meaning the problem is that we have a lot of people. ऐसा नहीं कि लोग नहीं हैं. We have experts willing to also come, work in the government, work outside the government, but we don't have the right kind of framework in this. And what I can also framework is that see, a lot of times also there are some good people sitting in the government, but then they think that they can do it all. Now, what we also need them to understand is that they need to be sitting there, not only doing stuff, but getting things done. Yes. And then you have all the specialists around in the market. How do you tap them at the right place so that we get the right kind of planning and right kind of implementation? So that framework is something that we need to do.
Very quickly. I think agree 100%. We need the right people. But I think Jana group has been talking. I think stability matters. So you need to give stability of 4-5 years to the commission. I think we need to experiment with that. A couple of cases that has worked well. Commissioners have stayed for 5 years or so. So I think that probably can help swing the needle. Second is, and this is just a straight thought. I think there is, in our consciousness, this craving for land, more land. And part of that comes from our political system where ministers have these acres of bungalows. Right? Maybe we should think about having some kind of guidelines for maximum area that different people or different government officials can have in terms of their accommodation. And charity begins from home, but maybe if we can have that at least guideline, probably that.
And saving for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Many of the bungalows are British built, right? Like some of the IAS officers, you visit them at home.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly. I mean, it's unreal. Right? I mean, kind of those accommodations are.
Not just accommodation, I think they have been 8 acres per square kilometers of land.
Correct, exactly. So, why do we not talk about it? There should be something. You say HIG is there, there should be something like an upper ceiling.
even if you own land in the city center and don't develop. Like many people buy land and it's just.
The reason why it doesn't get developed is because they know land will always be scarce. So the way to do it is increase the supply. People will start developing farming.
Yes, thank you all so much. I know we started late, so it's not really our fault. Thank you for this rich discussion. We have taken extended notes. We will share the meeting notes with everyone and kind of make it available to the audience as well. And hope to keep this discussion going. Maybe have an online meeting early next year to synthesize what we've spoken about. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Could we just stay for a second?
Hello,
we should also invite Zora and Nani.
Yeah. Dora, Bani, Bani, and Vachna.
Zora and Nani, please, आप भी आ जाओ.
Oh, in that.
Yes, sure, no problem.
Yeah, right.